Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business News Afternoon Report for Friday, the 8th of November, 2024. I'm Sean Aylmer. Every afternoon, we've got the 5 stories that happened today that you need to know about. Story number 1, the S&P ASX 200 closed up nearly 1% today to 8,295 points, with tech stocks leading the way. There was plenty of corporate news around. ANZ reported an 8% drop in net profit for the 12 months to the end of September to $6.5 billion, but its share price rose more than 1%. Commonwealth Bank share price hit another record high. REA reported a jump in quarterly revenue. News Corp's share price hit a record high after a robust first quarter. Chief Executive Robert Thompson said the sale process for Foxtel is progressing. Life360, the tracking app, hit an all-time high after being upgraded by UBS. Its share price is up about 200% over the past year. Shares in Mayne Pharma jumped more than 10% after it confirmed it was being shopped around to buyers. And biotech Neuren Pharmaceuticals rose 15% after it reported strong sales of its debut drug for the treatment of Rett syndrome. Worst on the day was Block, owner of Afterpay, which fell more than 6%. Story number 2, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has secured consensus from the National Cabinet for a social media ban for children under 16 years of age. The legislation is expected to be introduced into Parliament next week. The PM said while the ban won't solve all the problems, it will send a clear message about what society thinks is appropriate. The legislation will seek to establish an obligation on tech companies to take reasonable steps to prevent age-restricted children from accessing their sites and include significant penalties for the inappropriate use of personal data. There will be a 1-year implementation period before the laws come into force. Earlier today, Meta's Australian Policy Director, Mia Garlick, said app stores, rather than social media companies, should be responsible for setting age limits. She said Meta did not have the technology to implement the restrictions. Story number 3, a Qantas flight leaving from Sydney bound for Brisbane was forced to circle back today and re-land after an engine failure. The incident appears to have lighted a grass fire, which was quickly brought under control, but not before plumes of smoke rose from next to the runway. Passengers on flight QF 520 heard a loud bang, which the airline said was a contained engine failure. Contained meaning only in that engine. The plane was surrounded by firefighters when it landed, and passengers were escorted back to the airport safely. It came just hours after an Australian Border Force IT outage triggered major immigration queues after the Smart Gate system went down. Sydney and Melbourne were worst affected on that one. Story number 4, Donald Trump, who won't be president until the new year, has already started throwing his weight around. He's appointed his campaign manager, Susie Wiles, as his chief of staff. He said he hasn't spoken to Vladimir Putin yet, but did receive a congratulatory message from Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The big ticket items being debated most in Washington at the moment are tax, defense, immigration and tariff policy. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden said he hopes Americans can lower the temperature after the contentious presidential campaign. He said he would work with Mr. Trump to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition. And story number 5, the US Federal Reserve cut interest rates by 25 basis points in the world's largest economy, but most of the discussion post the cut was about comments from Chair Jerome Powell, who said he's ready to defend the central bank from political pressure following the re-election of Donald Trump. When asked would he step aside if Donald Trump asked for his resignation, Powell responded, "No, just no." He said the president lacks the legal authority to demote or remove the chairman or other senior Fed officials. Trump was critical of Powell for cutting interest rates by 50 basis points during the election campaign. During a press conference after the rate cut overnight, Powell avoided answering questions on what a Trump administration would mean for the economy and monetary policy. Meanwhile, the Bank of England also cut its benchmark rate for the second time overnight. That's it for the afternoon report for Friday, the 8th of November, 2024. Don't forget to hit follow on the podcast and find Fear and Greed on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. Join Adam Lang and I tomorrow morning for the Weekend Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your evening.